We're going to talk right now about, well, your working hours, your working day. We talk a lot about working from home, don't we? And now we're talking about civil servants who apparently don't want to have to work 5 days in the office. They would like more time or off. They'd like a day for chores, a day for rest, and a day with their family. I don't know in which particular order they'd prioritise those. But I mean, you think, well, absolutely fine. I now don't work in this job on a Friday. Took the pay cut commensurate with doing 80% of the work. I got 80% of the pay. Mind-blowing idea. No, civil servants don't want to take a pay cut. They want to be paid for 5 days a week whilst doing 4 for their own mental health and happiness. Let's talk about this with Marilyn Devonish. She's a remote working consultant. Good morning to you, Marilyn. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
Well, I'm very well. I'm sure you're much happier than me, though, because, of course, you know, you're in favour of this working from home all the time, and apparently this is what makes people happy. But also getting paid to have a day off, which is basically what civil servants are asking for.
Now, it's an interesting one because there was a flagship local authority, the South Cambridgeshire District Council, and they ran a pilot over a period of sort of really 18 months to look at the impact of that. They made massive savings, over £320,000 in that year that they did it. And it also saved them a lot of money in staffing costs. So when I did a little bit more digging in terms of, well, how can that be? People are potentially working less, all that sort of stuff. And what happened was, one of the things that they talked about was institutional memory, because when staff are off with stress, burnout, they're overwhelmed, they're not up to full productivity, you're often relying on agency staff. That's very expensive. And you have to retrain people every time they come through the door. So they found benefits that went beyond just the
right.
baseline.
So people are happier, they're not so stressed, they don't take time off so much, they don't leave, you keep them, and the long-term continuity is better.
Absolutely.
Okay. Right. Now, look, I can understand a part of that, because one of the reasons when I was doing the early shift, and I say all credit to Mike, is 5 days. I did it for 4 of the 5.5 years, getting up at 4:20 every day, but with the family and still wanting to be awake in the evening to talk to my teenager and my husband. I just felt, you know, for my own longevity, to be able to carry on, I wouldn't be able to carry on doing that. Now, and again, you people make choices. Here's my thing, though. We know that productivity in the public sector is totally flatlining across the public sector. Even in the NHS, when they have been plied with extra billions, we don't see the number of treatments or operations patients seen going up. We see this across the public sector, whether it's Passport Office, local councils, civil service, every kind, while the private sector has seen productivity go up and up. Now, not as high as in some other countries. I think we do have an issue with the 45-minute Zoom meeting, the CCing everyone and every single email, which slows everyone down getting their job done. But civil servants, the idea that civil servants who've not seen a productivity improvement in 20 years, the idea that these people are uniquely stressed and need to have an extra day off a week and can get their 5 days of work done in 4 days, seems to me to be pretty preposterous.
Do you know, it's an interesting phenomenon. I call it the holiday in tray, where somebody can have an in tray that's like to the ceiling. They're not getting through this thing. Then suddenly they know they're going to be on holiday for 2 weeks and they can't leave outstanding work. And my goodness, do they power through it? And human beings tend to fill the time that they have available. So one of the things, I think that's the reason why productivity often goes up when people do the 4 day. And there was a whole experiment that called the 4-day work week, and they had 61 organisations take part. 92% of those organisations after the trial opted to continue, and 18 of those organisations added it into their corporate policy because they saw productivity, and some of them actually saw an increase in profits. So I know it sounds like a really weird phenomenon. And one of the things I always say, when things are done well, and you are benchmarking the work, you can have miraculous things happen because people's minds are more focused, and but like you said before, in terms of having a bit of time for your life, and because we're not robots, we're not automatons. I don't think anybody wants to work someone into the ground. Now, if there are productivity issues, you need to be looking at those from a leadership development perspective.
Yeah, I know, and I understand, but the message I hear, and I've always said this, if someone says, I can get my job done, my 5 days of week job done in 4 days, what they're actually telling me is that they waste an awful lot of their time. 20% of it, in fact. The amount of time that people spend in pointless meetings, sending pointless emails, yapping at the coffee shop, in the cafe, sitting on the internet doing their shopping as opposed to actually doing their job. That's why they're able to be more productive productive in the 4 days and the 5 days. But the answer to that is not you only work the 4 days. The answer to that is why don't you work as productively on all 5 days? And then the company will do much better. We can all get pay rises. We can all go on and have better lives. Why don't they do that?
Well, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. And one of the things I would definitely say is, in terms of this, now, when I was back in the day, they used to call it compressed hours. I'm guessing there is going to be a little bit of the refocusing of the work, because you're absolutely right. If you're going, well, hold on a minute, I can do this in 4 days. Why is it taking 5? Again, we've got some key performance indicator issues going on there. But with this one, and I have to look more deeply into the study, but one of the things that the 4-day work week said is there was about 2-3 months of pre-preparation in the lead up to this. You don't just wake up one day and go, right, we're all doing 4 days. There was planning, there was scoping. Okay, how do we do this? What's our continuity plan? What's going to be in, what's going to be out? So I don't think it was just as straightforward as like, great, we're just going to pretend that we can do all of this in 4 days. There was a smoothing of the workload, and I'm guessing a redistribution of that.
But that's it. You put all that prep into it. If you did that much prep to making it all more efficient and productive over 5 days, you'd have seen the same thing. Once you go down to the 4-day working week, why not the 3-day working week? Why not 5 days off, 2 days on? I mean, why not? But why not? I mean, the logic that, you know, that if this works, then this must work better, surely.
Do you know, but it's one of those things, because stress, I'm going to say billion with a B, 29 billion pounds per year in the UK is lost to stress and stress.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's lost to people claiming stress. That's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. That's what everyone claims now. No, for decades it was backache, and then it became stress, and now it's mental health. Because none of these things are provable and none of these things are verifiable. A doctor can't tell you don't have stress or you don't have backache. That's why people say these things.
I will say I've been a coach and therapist for the last 24 years this October. Stress, anxiety, confidence, self-esteem, all of those sorts of things. I will say it's very real. And some of the things that are happening with people mentally will physiologically show up in the body. So I think that's... And, of course, science is now catching up to that.
Yeah, I completely... No, there are people who are stressed. God, I've seen people... I've worked in situations, I've been in situations where people are doing long hours, early hours, and they are got massive pressure on them. They've got, you know, some people have had bullying bosses and the things. It's unbelievably stressful. I know people who had to leave work as a result of the way they were treated. People who've won, you know, a lot of money in employment tribunals as a result of it. You know, very, very real. But the average person saying, oh, I'm stressed, can't go to work for 2 weeks. No, I'm sorry, I've got no time for it.
And also with it, okay, let's just, and even if we halve that number, let's just, for the benefit of the doubt, it's 10 billion. Whatever, with something with a B on the end, that's a lot of money. And one of the things that they often find is people who are unhappy in their work, they are less productive.
Well, so whether get another job then.
5 days, 6 days, 7 days, productivity is less. And one of the things I think the 4-day work week is looking to address is to have people who are actually more fulfilled and rounded. So when they are at work, they've handled some of the things that happen outside of work that you have to sort of cram into a day or so.
Isn't it funny, though, that there's always people in sort of office paper-pushing jobs where they get all this stress. People who are working in factories, people who are, like, you know, delivering, you know, on the delivery of the Uber Eats, that stuff. People who are working in takeaways. People who are working in a corner shop that's open, you know, 24/7. They apparently don't seem to suffer from stress. It's just the people doing the job where they go, can you get this to Jean in accounts? Those are the people who are finding life impossible to cope with. Isn't that
Julia,
weird? What a weird coincidence that is.
Julia, one of the things now, it's going to be somebody who's watching this, please go and correct me. However, I remember years ago reading something about how they came up with the 5-day work week. It was completely arbitrary. There was no science behind it whatsoever. And I think it was after the war where they wanted to rebuild.
Well, people used to work a 6.5 day week, didn't they? And then, you know...
I mean, of course it's arbitrary. Came up with that. Somebody just came up with that.
Yeah, until the Industrial Revolution. I mean, people worked a 7-day week. People were involved in the, you know, agrarian farms don't stop on a Sunday. Yeah, we shall see how this goes. I fear that, you know, you're the one who's going to be proved right on this one, because that's the way things are going to go. Marilyn Devonish, a remote working consultant. Thank you for that.